All right, Synth Dive community. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are strapping in for a really interesting look at a piece of gear. It's a bit of a cult classic, maybe, but seriously packed with potential.
Oh, yeah.
The Roland SH-32 synthesizer.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And for this deep dive, we're really going to treat it like a guided audio tutorial.
Yeah.
Specifically for you, the synth dive folks.
Exactly.
We've pulled together quite a bit of stuff. The SH-32's own manuals, specs, of course, but also articles on synthesis, forum discussions, analyses of styles like Boards of Canada, Vangelis, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the stuff people are always asking about. So our mission, basically, using all that material, it's not just to, describe the SH-32. We want to really unpack it, section by section.
Right.
Understand how the synthesis works, and then, crucially, show you how to take that tech knowledge and make sounds. You know, those distinct textures everyone's after.
Think warm pads that evolve, gritty bass lines, those really expressive leads, the sounds the sources kept pointing towards.
Exactly. But before we jump onto the controls, let's quickly touch on the basic idea that SH-32 uses. It's fundamental, really, and the sources all mention it. Subtractive synthesis.
Yeah, good starting point. So subtractive synthesis, basically you start with a sound that's already got a lot going on harmonically. Lots of frequencies, overtones, complex.
Like a raw block of sound?
Kind of, yeah. Then use filters to subtract stuff, take away frequencies to shape the tone, the timbre. You start bright and buzzy, usually, and then carve away until you get the sound you want.
Makes sense. Generate something complex, then sculpt it by taking bits away. Simple concept, but powerful.
Incredibly powerful. And yeah, waveforms like Sawtooth are great starting points, like the sources say. They're full of harmonics, so you've got lots to work with for bass or leads or square waves, noise, plenty of raw material.
Got it. So the SH-32 is all about that subtractive idea.
Entirely. That's its core.
Okay, so how does the SH-32 actually do this? Let's get into the front panel, section by section, just like it's laid out in the manual and sources. Starting at the beginning, the sound source.
Right, the oscillators.
Yeah.
OSC1 and OSC2 on the panel. Two independent sound generators.
And looking at the specs, wow, it's pretty deep right away. You've got your usual suspects, saw, square, pulse, PWM.
Yeah, but also triangle sign, this thing called spectrum and noise. But here's what's really interesting, and the manual highlights this. Lots of these basic waves have multiple variations.
Variations? How many?
Well, the sources add it all up to 67 different oscillator waveforms total. Right there.
67? Seriously?
Yep. That's a huge amount of starting tonal color before you even think about filters or anything else.
Okay, wow. That definitely opens things up from the get-go. So how do you control the pitch? Standard stuff.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You've got the octave button for big jumps, then a pitch coarse slider that does semitones over 2 octaves, and a pitch fine slider, which is crucial.
For detuning.
Yep. Exactly. Plus or minus 50 cents. Perfect for layering OSC1 and OSC2 slightly out of tune to get that really thick, classic synth sound. Essential technique.
Ah, I see a sub-oscillator control, too. Sub-E OSC.
Yes. That adds a signal an octave or 2 below the main oscillators. Absolutely key for adding weight, that low-end rumble, especially for bass sounds. The manual even mentions a specific subsonic mode here, designed just for getting those really thick bass frequencies you can almost feel.
Okay, now we're definitely thinking Boards of Canada bass lines.
Gotcha.
And the balance slider just mixes the two.
Yep, your basic mixer for OSC1 and OSC2 levels. Simple, but you need it for balancing different waves or those detuned layers to build complex sounds.
Okay, what about the more advanced oscillator tricks the sources mentioned, like sync and ring modulation?
Yeah, those are powerful. Oscillator sync basically forces OSC1's waveform to restart every time OSC2 starts its cycle.
What does that do sonically?
It creates these sharp, sometimes complex, almost vocal-like tones. Really good for aggressive leads, with interesting harmonic movement when you tweak OSC1's pitch.
Okay. And ring mod?
Ring modulation multiplies the signals from OSC1 and OSC2 together. It creates totally new frequencies, stuff that wasn't in either oscillator originally.
Sounds potentially weird?
Oh, it can be. Very metallic, sometimes dissonant, think bell tones, weird sci-fi zaps, maybe clanging industrial sounds. Really interesting textures.
Cool. So powerful tools, but the sources were quick to point out some limitations, right? Things you need to know.
Absolute crucial detail, yeah, from the manual. If you use oscillator sync in a patch, that patch becomes monophonic, one note at a time. And you can only use it in part 1 in performance mode. Also, and this catches people out, you can't use the sub-oscillator, PWM, oscillator sync, and ring mod all at the same time in one patch.
Okay, so you have to choose. Pick the function that suits the sound best.
Exactly. You got to decide what's most important for that specific patch.
Good to know the boundaries. Oh, and a quick workflow tip. Press the OSC1 and OSC2 buttons together.
Yeah, lets you edit parameters for both oscillators at once. Saves a bit of time.
Nice. Okay, so we've made our raw sound with the oscillators. Now the sculpting part, the heart of subtractive, the filter section.
Yep, the filter section. This is where you shape the timbre, like we said, by taking frequencies away.
And the SH-32 gives you a few filter types.
It does. You get low-pass filter, LPF, bandpass, BPF, high-pass, HPF, peaking, PKG, and you can just turn it off, too. Yeah. LPF is the most common, cuts frequencies above the cutoff point, makes things warmer, darker.
Right, and there's a slow peak control, negative 24 dB, negative 12 dB.
Yeah, that sets how steep the cutoff is.
Yeah.
Negative 24 dB per octave is sharper, more aggressive cutoff. Negative 12 dB is smoother, more gentle, different characters.
Okay, and the main knob, CU off frequency.
That's your primary tool here. It sets the frequency where the filter starts cutting, turn it down with an LPF, sound gets darker, sweep it up, it gets brighter. Classic synth stuff.
Resonance, sometimes called Q or emphasis.
Yeah, that boost frequencies right at the cutoff point. Turn it up, and you get that wee-ow sweep sound. Adds that vocal quality, or a real whine at high settings. Very characteristic sound.
I see an ENV depth slider right in the filter section, too.
Ah, yes. That controls how much the filter cutoff moves based on the filter envelope. Now, the main envelope sliders are over in the amp section, but this lets you apply that envelope shape to the filter.
So the filter opens and closes with the note.
Exactly. Super useful for percussive sounds, like bass stabs, where the filter snaps open then closes quickly. The sources mention this specifically for bass.
And key follow.
That makes the filter cutoff change depending on what note you play. So higher notes can be brighter, lower notes stay darker, helps keep things balanced across the keyboard, stops low notes getting too muffled or high notes too piercing.
Okay, makes sense. So generated the sound, filtered it. Now control its volume, its dynamics, the amplifier section, AMP.
Right. The amp section is all about volume over time, and it uses the classic ADSR envelope generator.
Attack, decay, sustain, release. The 4 pillars.
Couldn't have said it better. Attack time, A, is how fast the sound gets loud when you hit a key. Decay time, D, is how quickly it drops from that peak. Sustain level, S, is the volume it holds at while you hold the key down.
And release.
Release time is how long it takes to fade to silence after you let go of the key. Those 4 sliders basically define the shape of your sound in time, how it starts, holds, and ends.
Got it. There's a time key follow function here, too, in the amp section.
Yeah, similar idea to the filter key follow, but this affects the envelope times, specifically the decay time. You can make higher notes decay faster than lower notes, for instance. Has a bit of nuance, maybe mimics acoustic instruments sometimes.
And for overall volume of a patch.
There's a level button over on the right panel. That's where you set the main volume for individual patches, rhythm sets, and performances.
Okay, ADSR shapes the volume. Now let's add movement, modulation. That's the LFO section, right?
Exactly. Low-frequency oscillators. The SH-32 gives you 2 independent ones, LFO1 and LFO2. They generate wave shapes, just like the main oscillators, but really slowly. Sub-audio rates.
So you don't hear them directly, they just wiggle other things?
Precisely. They add movement, life, modulation to your sounds.
And the sources say there are 7 LFO shapes.
Yep. Triangle, sine, sawtooth, square, trapezoidal, sample and hold, SNH, and random, RND. So you get smooth cycles, choppy steps, random fluctuations. Lots of options for different kinds of movement.
Rate control sets the speed, 0 to 127. Okay. But BPM SYNC sounds really useful for rhythmic stuff.
Oh, absolutely essential. BPM SYNC locks the LFO speed to your master tempo. And then the beat cycle settings 8, 4, 2, 1, 12, 13, 14 lets you set the LFO cycle length in musical beats.
So you can make things pulse exactly in time with the track. Eighth notes, quarter notes, triplets.
Exactly that. Perfect for rhythmic filter sweeps or tremolo effects that lock to the groove.
Fade time. What's that do?
That's pretty cool. It controls how long it takes for the LFO modulation to gradually fade in after you press a key. So instead of vibrato starting instantly, it can slowly creep in. More subtle, more musical sometimes.
Nice. And key EC, SYNC.
That just means the LFO restarts its cycle every time you press a new key. So the modulation pattern is consistent for every note you play. Predictable, turn it off, and the LFO just keeps running freely.
So where can you point these LFOs? What can they wiggle?
The sources list the main destinations. Each has its own depth control. Minus 63 to plus 63, so you control the amount and polarity. You can modulate oscillator 1 pitch, oscillator 2 pitch.
Vibrato?
Yep. Filter cutoff.
Wah-wah effects.
Right. Amp level.
Tremolo.
And pan.
Auto panning. Cool. So pitch, filter, amp, pan, the big ones. Sources also mentioned pulse width.
Yeah, LFO's modulating pulse width is key for getting those classic PWM sounds. That shifting phasing tone is definitely a target.
And just like the oscillators, press LFO1 and LFO2 together to edit both.
You got it. Speeds things up.
Okay, last stop on the main signal path. Effects. INS-FX and rev delay.
Yeah, two main effect blocks built right in. You apply them per patch or rhythm set. INS-FX is for insert effects, things like distortion or chorus maybe. Rev delay is for, well, reverb and delay.
And you can switch them on or off for each sound and change how they're connected.
Exactly. On-off buttons for each block. And then this series parallel switch, SURPAR. Series means sound goes to INS-FX then into rev delay. Parallel means the dry sound splits and goes to both effect blocks at the same time.
Different flavors depending on the routing.
Totally. And that routing is saved per patch or rhythm set too.
There's an E-level parameter mentioned for rev delay?
Yeah, effect level. That specifically sets the send amount to the reverb delay block when you're in parallel mode. You adjust that in the partisan mode.
Gotcha. And you dial up specific effects using the FXS Weston knob. The sources seemed quite keen on a couple of the delay types.
Oh yeah. One is long delay synem, as the name suggests. It's a delay that syncs to your BPM. Parameters like intensity for delay time, color for damping the repeats tone, rate for feedback, level for mix, standard sync delay stuff. Very useful.
But the other one sounded unique. Resonance delay.
Huh. Yeah, that one's pretty wild. It's a delay where the pitch of the feedback actually changes based on the delay time set.
The pitch changes.
Yes,
Seriously.
Seriously, it can create these crazy evolving pitched echoes. The manual even mentions if you crank the feedback and sweep the intensity knob fast, you get this bizarre motorcycle engine sound effect.
Okay, that's definitely distinctive. Sounds like fun to play with. Parameters like feedback, shift mod depth, damp mod rate. Lots to tweak there.
For sure. It's one of those effects that gives the SH-32 real character.
And chorus was mentioned too, just for thickening.
Yep. Sources mention chorus is a standard effect for making sounds thicker, wider, adding that slight detuned wash. Good for leads, pads. Pretty standard application, but effective.
Okay, so that's the whole chain. Oscillators make the sound, filter shapes it, amp controls volume over time, LFOs add movement, effects add space and character.
That's the core of it. Now that we've kind of walked through the tools on the panel, let's actually use them.
Right. Let's get into the creative examples, focusing on those Boards of Canada and Vangelis styles the sources talked about. Time to translate the knobs and sliders into actual sounds you can build. And remember, this is about experimenting using these controls we just covered.
Okay, first up, the Boards of Canada Hauntology kind of bass. Sources point towards thick, maybe a bit detuned or gritty, nostalgic vibe, sometimes percussive. Sawtooth waves were suggested for thickness.
Okay, so OSC section. Let's grab a sawtooth on the OSC1, drop the octave way down. Then for thickness, maybe add OSC2. Use pitch fine to detune it just a tiny bit from OSC1, or just kick in the sub-osc.
Both good options. Try detuning OSC2 slightly first, maybe just a few cents. Use the balance slider to blend them. Then maybe add the sub-osc underneath if you need more weight. Experiment with that mix.
Okay, then filter. Definitely a low-pass filter, right? Take it warm, take off the buzz.
Yep, LPF. Dial the cutoff down until it's sitting nicely warm but still present. Add a touch of resonance, maybe, just for a little character, but probably not too much for this style.
And for the percussive elements some Volgo tracks have, use the envelope on the filter.
Exactly. Use that ENV depth slider in the filter section. Then go to the AMP section and shape the ADSR, give it a fast attack, a quick decay, and probably a very low or zero sustain level. That quick decay on the amp envelope will also affect the filter via ENG depth, making it snap open and closed.
Right. So the AMP envelope, fast attack for punch, short decay, low sustain for that plucky feel. Release can be pretty short too.
Sounds about right. Then effects. Bulbo often has that slightly degraded lo-fi feel.
So maybe some subtle distortion or saturation from the INS-FX.
Could work. Or just use the rev delay for a bit of space. Maybe a short, slightly dark delay, or a touch of reverb to give it that atmosphere, that nostalgic feel. Don't drown it, just add a halo.
Okay, cool. Hauntology bass foundations. Now, opposite end maybe? Vangelis cinematic lead. Big, expressive, maybe aggressive, definitely wide. Sources again point to Sawtooth for leads with bite.
Right, OSC section. Sawtooth on OSC1 is your starting point. For more power, bring in OSC2. Again, slight detuning with pitch fine adds richness. Or, for really sharp, cutting lead, try oscillator sync.
But remember that makes the patch mono.
Good point, worth remembering. So choose based on whether you need polyphony. Use the balance slider to blend.
Filter section. Sculpt it. LPF is common, but maybe a BPF or even HPF could work depending on how bright and cutting you want it.
Could be. Experiment, and definitely use the ENV to depth slider again. Set the amp envelope with maybe a slightly slower attack this time. Let the filter sweep open as the note swells in. Makes it more expressive.
Amp envelope. Maybe not instant attack. Allow a little swell. Good sustain level for holding those epic notes. Release time to let it ring out.
Yeah, that sounds right for Vangel Daggins. Now, LFOs are crucial here for that cinematic feel, that movement.
Right. So maybe LFO1 to filter cutoff, slow rate, just making the timbre gently evolve.
Perfect. Or LFO2 to pitch for vibrato. A slow sine or triangle waves. And use that fade time control so the vibrato doesn't start immediately but swells in after a moment. Very expressive.
Nice touch. And effects are huge for cinematic scale.
Absolutely. Sources mention distortion for aggression, chorus for thickening, and obviously delay and reverb for that huge space.
So maybe try a distortion or overdrive from INS FX for bite, add chorus for width, then pile on the delay and reverb from the Revit delay section. Long delays, big reverbs.
Exactly. And play with the series parallel routing here. Putting distortion before delay verb sounds very different than running them in parallel. Experiment.
Okay, epic leads covered. Now, that blended pad sound, ambient, cinematic, and hauntology. Warm, evolving, atmospheric, merging those two worlds. Sources talked about complex pads needing rich waves, LPFs, modulation, and ambient needs delay.
Right. OSC section. Start rich. Sawtooth on OSC 1 again, maybe. Good harmonic content for pads. Add OSC 2, perhaps detune it slightly, or even choose a different waveform variation from that list of 67 to add complexity. Use balance to blend.
Filter. Definitely low-pass filter. Set the cutoff fairly low for warmth, but add some resonance this time, maybe more than the bass, to give it some character as it moves.
And movement is key. Use LFOs modulating the filter cutoff. Slow rates are usually best for pads, creating that gradual ebb and flow. You could also use the amp envelope with a slow attack and NDK applied via E and V depth to make the filter open slowly too.
AMP envelope. This needs to be slow and smooth. Slow attack time so the pad fades in gently. High sustain level so it holds. Long release time so it fades out gracefully. Maybe use time key follow here if you want subtle differences across the keyboard.
Good call. And LFOs, use them generously but subtly for pads.
Yeah, LFO1 on filter cutoff, like we said. Maybe LFO2 on amp level for a very slow, gentle volume swell or tremolo. Or on pen for slow stereo movement.
All good ideas. Use slow rates. Or if you want rhythmic pulsing, use BPM SYNC and the Beats Sealy settings. Maybe a slow fade time on the LFOs so the movement eases in.
And effects. Absolutely essential for ambient pads.
Mandatory. Reveille section is your best friend. Long delays, maybe with feedback cranked a bit so they trail off and wash around. Lots of reverb for that sense of space. Experiment with the different reverb types if available.
Maybe use INS FX for something like chorus to add width and shimmer before it hits the delay verb.
Definitely. Or maybe even that resonance delay for really strange, evolving textures in the background. Play with series parallel. Again, putting chorus before reverb is classic, but parallel might give you a clearer core sound with effects around it.
Wow. Okay, so by really digging into each section, oscillators, filter, amp, LFOs, effects, and understanding how they work together, you can actually build these specific kinds of sounds.
It's totally achievable.
Yeah.
It's just about applying those subtractive principles with the SH-32's specific controls and features.
But wait, there's more, right? The sources mention other features that unlock even more potential beyond just the basic synth sections.
Oh yeah, definitely. Don't forget its polyphony. It can play up to 32 notes at once, which is huge.
32 voices. And it's multi-timbral, too.
Yep, 4 parts, so you can layer sounds, create keyboard splits, or even run 3 synth parts plus a rhythm part, all from the SH-32 itself. It's quite powerful for sequencing or live performance.
And the manual mentioned a part stack function.
Yeah, that's like a shortcut for layering patches. Makes creating really thick, complex sounds super easy without deep menu diving.
And for getting patterns and ideas going, the arpeggiator and chord memory seem really useful.
Hugely useful. The arpeggiator has programmable style step input or real-time syncs to BPM, loads of built-in patterns, great for instant rhythmic ideas. And chord memory lets you play complex chords with just one finger. You can store your own chord shapes too. Really powerful performance tools.
I thought this was fascinating. The manual mentions an analog feel function. What's that about?
It's a subtle thing, but cool. It adds a tiny bit of random pitch drift to the oscillators, trying to mimic the slight tuning instability you get on old vintage analog synths.
Ah, that slightly rough-edged quality one source mentioned, that imperfection that adds character.
Exactly that. It helps dial in that vibe, makes it sound a little less perfect, a little more organic.
And of course, MIDI control. CC messages, pitch bend, aftertouch affecting things like filter cutoff or amp level.
Yeah, standard but essential for expressive playing, especially if you're using a controller keyboard with aftertouch or sequencing it from a DAW, adds another layer of dynamic control.
Man, okay, that was definitely a deep dive. We went through the Roland SH-32 drawing on all those sources, looked at every section, the controls, the synthesis, and then how to actually build sounds like those Boards of Canada or Vangelis styles.
It really is a surprisingly deep synth when you get under the hood and understand how all the pieces fit together. Lots of potential there.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive, especially tailored for the synth dive community. We really hope this audio tutorial helps you get more out of your SH-32, or maybe inspires you to check one out.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you did find this useful and you want more explorations like this into synths and music tech, definitely subscribe to the Synth Dive YouTube channel.
Please do. And give this deep dive a like if you enjoyed it. That really helps us know what content you find valuable. And leave a comment. Ask questions. Share your own SH-32 tips. Request future topics. We read them all.
We do. And hey, as we mentioned based on the source material, our exploration of the Roland SH-32 isn't quite done yet. We'll actually be back for another deep dive, continuing with this versatile synth in the next tutorial.
Awesome. So keep experimenting, keep making noise. And remember, like we saw with the SH-32 and here in artists like Bob AC, sometimes the really cool sounds, the deep creativity comes from understanding the tools, warts, and all the nuances, even the limitations.
It really does. Kind of reminds you of that saying one source hinted at regarding Boards of Canada's magic. Maybe the devil really is in the details.